Friends, let me confess something. I used to think wealthy people had some kind of secret. I don't know, as if they gathered at midnight whispering, "Look, only we know this. Don't tell anyone." Offshore accounts, phone calls in leather chairs, and of course, an expensive whiskey. I genuinely believed the only difference between wealthy people and me was information I couldn't access or people I'd never meet. Then, I spent a year studying what wealthy people actually do with their money. Not the fakers leasing Lamborghinis for photoshoots on Instagram, the real ones. Those who built seven-figure net worths on five-figure salaries over 20 or 30 years. A dental hygienist in Philadelphia who saved $1.2 million in her 403B. An electrician in Cincinnati who retired at 59. His savings generating $48,000 a year in income. A couple in Dallas earning a combined $92,000 who quietly crossed $1 million in net worth. While their neighbors were financing BMWs and renovating kitchens on home equity lines of credit, these people had quietly turned the corner. What I found wasn't a secret. It was the opposite. 8 things I had been completely ignoring my entire adult life. They sounded boring when I first heard them. Didn't feel important. The kind of thing I'd scroll past in a video after 30 seconds. But those 8 things are the exact reason they're wealthy and I wasn't. And every single one of them is something you can start doing this week, with the income you already have, in the life you're already living. Some will make you uncomfortable, because you'll have to look at habits you've been avoiding. One might completely change the way you think about money forever. Let's get into it. Net worth. This is the number wealthy people track with almost religious devotion, and the number most people have never once calculated. Net worth is simple. Everything you own minus everything you owe. Add up your checking account, savings, investments, retirement accounts, and the market value of your home if you own one. Then subtract every debt, mortgage balance, car loan, student loans, credit cards, personal loans. The number you're left with, positive or negative, is your net worth. That's the scoreboard. Wealthy people check this number regularly, monthly, sometimes weekly. They know it the way you know your phone battery percentage. The Abound Wealth Annual Millionaire Survey found that their millionaire clients overwhelmingly track their net worth and treat it as the single most important metric of their financial life. Meanwhile, most people have no idea what their net worth is. They focus on income, how much they earn per year, how much their paycheck is. They celebrate raises and promotions as if the money is automatically translating into wealth. It almost never is. Here's why the distinction matters. Income tells you how much water is flowing through the pipe. Net worth tells you how much is staying in the bucket. A household earning $250,000 a year with a net worth of $80,000 is losing almost everything that flows through. A household earning $65,000 with a net worth of $400,000 is capturing and compounding an enormous percentage of every dollar that enters their life. According to Empowered data from January 2026, the average net worth for Americans in their 50s is $1,364,000. That sounds promising until you see the median, which is only $180,227. The average is pulled up dramatically by a small number of very wealthy households. The median, the actual midpoint, tells you that half of all Americans in their 50s have less than $181,000 to their name. People who've been earning income for 30 years, 3 decades of paychecks, and the typical household has accumulated less than 2 years of income in total wealth. Wealthy people don't let this happen because they watch the number, they track it, they react to it. When their net worth stagnates, they investigate why. When it drops, they adjust spending. When it grows, they increase their investment rate. The number drives the behavior. Without the number, there's nothing to drive. I calculated my net worth for the first time at 29. It was negative $11,400. That number made me physically ill. But it also changed my life. Because for the first time, I had an honest measurement of where I actually stood. Not where my salary said I should be, where I was. If you've never calculated yours, do it tonight. It takes 15 minutes. The discomfort lasts about an hour. The clarity lasts forever. The gap between income and spending. Wealthy people are obsessed with this gap. In personal finance circles, it has a name: the savings rate. But savings rate sounds clinical and boring. So let me describe it the way it actually functions in someone's life. The gap is the distance between what flows in and what flows out. It's the space between your paycheck and your lifestyle. It's the oxygen in the room. The wider the gap, the more wealth you accumulate. The narrower the gap, the more you stay exactly where you are, regardless of how much you earn. The Ramsey Solutions National Study of Millionaires found that 94% consistently lived below their means. Let that sink in. 94%, not most, not many. Virtually all of them. They earned $1 and spent less than $1. They earned a raise and didn't spend the raise. They earned a bonus and invested the bonus. The gap was sacred. They protected it the way other people protect their weekend plans. And for an American, that is genuinely sacred. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that the U.S. personal savings rate sits at about 4% as of early 2026. That means the average American keeps 4 cents out of every after-tax dollar. Everything else is gone. Spent, transferred to landlords, lenders, retailers, subscription services, delivery platforms, and car dealerships. 4 cents on the dollar? If you earned $50,000 after taxes last year, you kept roughly $2,000. Wealthy people, by contrast, typically save and invest 15 to 25% of their income, according to Fidelity Research. Among Abound Wealth's millionaire clients, the majority invest 25% or more. On the same $50,000 income, that's $12,500 a year going to work. The difference between $2,000 and $12,500 compounded at 8% over 30 years is the difference between roughly $244,000 and $1.5 million. Same income, same economy, same stock market. One person protected the gap and the other let lifestyle consume it. Completely different outcomes. My friend Daria makes $73,000 a year. She lives on about $51,000 after taxes and retirement contributions. Her gap is roughly 22%. She doesn't think of herself as wealthy. She drives a 2018 Hyundai Elantra. She gets her nails done once a month and considers it her luxury. She packs her lunch for days a week. Her coworker Matt makes $88,000, lives on $85,000, and has a gap of roughly 3%. Matt has a newer car, eats out 4 nights a week, and subscribes to everything. At 34, Daria has $167,000 invested. Matt has $19,000. Same office, same floor, same coffee in the break room. A completely invisible difference, but a mountain of distance in how they each relate to the gap. The cost of debt per dollar borrowed? This is where wealthy people's obsession gets almost clinical. They don't just avoid debt, they understand at a molecular level what debt costs them in real and opportunity dollars. When a wealthy person looks at a credit card balance of $5,000 at 22% APR, they don't see $5,000 of debt. They see roughly $14,700 in total payments over 18 years if only minimums are paid. They also see the $8,000 in investment returns that the $9,700 in interest would have generated if invested instead. So that $5,000 credit card balance costs roughly $23,000 in a wealthy person's mind. The sticker price is $5,000. The wealth destruction price is $23,000. Yes, $23,000. At this point, your mind might be spinning a little. Mine was too. Total U.S. household debt hit $18.8 trillion at the end of 2025, according to the New York Federal Reserve. Credit card balances alone crossed $1.28 trillion. The average American carries about $6,500 in revolving credit card debt at 22.4% APR. Nearly half of cardholders carry a balance month to month. Wealthy people, by contrast, treat credit cards as transaction tools, not lending instruments. The Abound Wealth Millionaire Survey found that their millionaire clients overwhelmingly use credit cards, but they use them the way you use a debit card. Full balance paid every month, rewards collected, interest paid, 0. They get the fraud protection, the cash back, the purchase insurance, and the convenience without paying a single cent in interest. They flipped the credit card from a debt trap into a wealth tool by understanding one principle most Americans ignore. If you're paying interest on a credit card, the card is using you. If you're paying 0 interest and collecting rewards, you're using the card. My relationship with debt changed the moment I calculated what my car loan was actually costing me. I was paying $492 a month on a $26,000 vehicle at 6.5% interest over 72 months. Over the life of the loan, I would pay roughly $35,400 total. $9,400 in pure interest. That $9,400 invested instead at 8% over 20 years would become roughly $43,800. My car, which would be worth maybe $4,000 by the time I paid it off, was quietly costing me $43,800 in future wealth. Once you see money this way, once you start running the opportunity cost calculation on every debt, your tolerance for borrowing evaporates almost overnight. Compound interest and the math of time. Wealthy people don't just know that compound interest exists, they feel it. They've internalized the curve so deeply that it influences every financial decision they make. Tom Corley's 5-year Rich Habits study of 233 wealthy individuals found that 88% of millionaires dedicate at least 30 minutes daily to self-education, much of it financial. They read about markets, taxes, investment strategies, and wealth-building mechanics. They don't just save money, they understand why saving money works, how the compounding curve bends, and what specific behaviors accelerate or destroy the curve over time. Here's what that understanding looks like in practice. A wealthy person who is 30 years old sees a $500 monthly investment not as $500. They see it as $1.1 million because they've done the math. $500 a month at 10% average annual returns over 35 years is roughly $1.1 million. That $500 isn't an expense, it's a seed that produces a forest. They can picture the forest because they've studied the math enough times that it's become visceral rather than theoretical. A person without this understanding sees $500 a month as a sacrifice. $500 of things they can't buy. $500 of experiences they can't have. $500 of life they're giving up this month for some abstract future benefit they can barely imagine. The difference between these two perspectives, the forest versus the sacrifice, is entirely determined by how deeply someone understands compound interest. The math is simple enough for a middle schooler to grasp. At 8% returns, your money doubles roughly every 9 years. If you invest $10,000 at 25, it becomes $20,000 at 34, $40,000 at 43, 80, 0 at 52, and $160,000 at 61. You contributed $10,000, the market created $150,000. But here's the brutal flip side. Every $10,000 you spend instead of invest at 25 doesn't cost you $10,000. It costs you $160,000. That's what wealthy people see when they look at a price tag. That's why they drive used cars and pack their lunches. They're not cheap, they're literate. They can read the cost of everything in two currencies simultaneously, today's dollars and tomorrow's dollars. Most people can only read one: tax efficiency. This is one of the least discussed and most impactful obsessions of wealthy Americans. They are relentless about minimizing the percentage of their income and investment gains that go to taxes. Not through illegal schemes, through legal structures that the tax code explicitly provides and that most Americans either don't know about or can't be bothered to use. In 2026, you can contribute up to $24,500 to a 401k, or $32,500 if you're over 50. Every dollar you contribute reduces your taxable income by that amount. On a $75,000 salary in the 22% bracket, contributing $10,000 to a traditional 401k saves you $2,200 in federal taxes that year. That's money the IRS would have taken that instead stays in your account compounding. Over 20 years, that annual $2,200 in tax savings alone, invested at 8%, grows to roughly $106,000. From tax efficiency, from using a box on a form your employer already provides, Roth IRAs are the other vehicle wealthy people quietly obsess over. You contribute after-tax dollars, but the money grows tax-free and comes out tax-free in retirement. In 2026, you can contribute up to $7,500 to a Roth IRA, or $8,600 if you're 50 or older. On a portfolio that grows to $500,000 over 30 years, the difference between paying taxes on withdrawals versus taking them, tax-free, is potentially over $100,000 in saved taxes during retirement. The Ramsey Solutions Millionaires study found that the top professions among self-made millionaires include engineers, accountants, and teachers. These aren't people with access to exotic tax shelters. They're people who consistently used the 401k, the Roth IRA, and the HSA. The three most powerful tax-advantaged accounts available to ordinary Americans, and they use them to their maximum every single year for decades. Credit score as a financial asset. Most people think of their credit score as a report card, good or bad, pass or fail. Wealthy people think of it as a financial instrument that directly controls the price they pay for every major purchase involving credit. The difference between a 680 credit score and a 760 credit score on a $300,000 30-year mortgage is roughly $70,000 in total interest over the life of the loan. $70,000? Same house, same loan amount, same number of payments. The only variable is 3 digits on a screen. Wealthy people monitor their credit scores the way athletes monitor their heart rates. They check it monthly through free tools. They keep their utilization below 10%. They never miss a payment. They request credit limit increases to improve their utilization ratio without increasing spending. They dispute errors immediately. Each of these micro-behaviors takes less than 5 minutes and collectively saves tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime of borrowing. Here's what most people miss about credit scores. They're not just relevant when you're borrowing money. Insurance companies use credit-based scores to set premiums. Landlords check credit before approving leases. Some employers review credit reports during hiring. A low score doesn't just cost you higher interest rates. It costs you access. Access to better apartments, lower insurance premiums, and opportunities that compound over time in ways that are difficult to measure but profoundly real, where their time goes. This one surprised me more than any other finding in my research. Wealthy people obsess over how they spend time with the same intensity they apply to how they spend money. Corley's Rich Habits study found that 67% of wealthy individuals watch less than an hour of television per day. Only 6% watch reality TV. Meanwhile, 77% of those living in poverty, in the same study, spent more than an hour daily on television, streaming, social media, and other passive entertainment. This isn't a moral judgment, it's a resource allocation observation. Time is the one asset you cannot earn more of. You can always make more money, you cannot make more time. Wealthy people treat their hours the way they treat their dollars. Every hour has a purpose. It's either earning, learning, building, or deliberately resting. There's almost no passive leakage. And 88% of wealthy individuals in the study read for at least 30 minutes a day, primarily nonfiction focused on self-improvement, business, or financial education. This habit alone, over the course of decades, produces a compounding knowledge advantage that influences every financial decision they make. I used to come home from work, collapse on the couch, and scroll my phone for 2 to 3 hours. Not because I was tired, because I was in the habit of being passive in the evenings. When I replaced 1 hour of scrolling per night with reading about personal finance, investing, or behavioral economics, the change was slow at first. But within 6 months, I was making different decisions without consciously trying to. I stopped impulse buying because I understood the psychology behind it. I increased my retirement contribution because I'd read about compound interest enough times that the math became visceral. I negotiated my car insurance for the first time because an article told me 70% of people who call get a reduction. That 1 hour a day didn't feel productive while I was doing it. Looking back, it was the single most productive hour of my entire day. The people around them, wealthy people, are deliberately selective about their social circle. This sounds elitist until you understand the behavioral science behind it. Your spending habits, savings, behaviors, and financial attitudes are heavily influenced by the 5 people you spend the most time with. If your closest friends finance new cars every 3 years, expensive restaurants are your default social activity, and nobody in your circle talks about investing, your financial behavior will mirror that environment. Not because you're weak, because humans are social animals who unconsciously calibrate to group norms. The Ramsey Solutions Millionaire study found that 93% of self-made millionaires attributed their success in part to surrounding themselves with supportive, like-minded people. Corley's research corroborated this. Wealthy individuals actively cultivated relationships with other financially grounded people. Not exclusively wealthy people, but people who shared their values around money, delayed gratification, and long-term thinking. My spending dropped noticeably when I started spending more time with Daria and less time in the friend group that treated every Saturday like a competition to see who could spend the most on brunch. It wasn't deliberate at first. I just gravitated toward the people who made me feel calm about money instead of anxious. Over time, my financial behavior shifted to match the group I was spending time with. I started meal prepping because Daria meal prepped. I opened a Roth IRA because Daria mentioned hers casually over coffee one morning. I started tracking my net worth because she tracked hers and made it seem like a normal thing to do instead of an obsessive thing. Your environment is your financial destiny. Wealthy people know this. They curate their environment with the same care they curate their portfolio. The specific financial traps at their current life stage. This is the last obsession, and it's the one that ties all the others together into a coherent system. Wealthy people don't just understand money in the abstract. They understand which specific financial mistakes are most likely to hit them based on exactly where they are in life right now. In your 20s, the trap is student loan paralysis and the failure to start investing because the amounts feel too small to matter. In your 30s, the trap is lifestyle inflation triggered by career advancement and the social pressure to perform middle-class success through housing and cars. In your 40s, the trap is undersaving during peak earning years because expenses for children, mortgages, and aging parents consume everything. In your 50s, the trap is panic investing or taking excessive risk because you realize you're behind. In your 60s, the trap is making irreversible Social Security and Medicare decisions without understanding the long-term math. Each decade carries a unique set of financial landmines. Wealthy people study the map before they walk through the field. They know which traps are coming before they arrive, and they build systems to avoid them in advance. A 32-year-old who understands that lifestyle creep is the primary wealth killer for their age group can inoculate themselves against it. A 54-year-old who understands catch-up contribution limits and the mechanics of delayed Social Security claiming can recover decades of undersaving in their final working years. The average American walks through these decades blind. They hit each trap at full speed because nobody told them it was there. They financed a $45,000 car in their 30s because everyone else did. They skipped catch-up contributions in their 50s because they didn't know the limits had changed. They claimed Social Security at 62 because they wanted the money now, not realizing that waiting until 70 increases their monthly benefit by roughly 77%. Every year you delay past full retirement age, your Social Security benefit grows by 8%. 8% guaranteed. No investment on earth offers a guaranteed 8% annual return. But millions of Americans claim early and forfeit that growth because they didn't understand the math. The average Social Security retirement benefit as of March 2026 is about $2,079 a month. That's roughly $24,950 a year. The average household, headed by someone 65 or older, spends over $61,000. Social Security was never designed to be your entire retirement income. It was designed to replace about 40%. The other 60% has to come from somewhere. And if you've spent 40 years ignoring the 8 things on this list, there's nowhere for it to come from. So here's where I want to leave you, because everything in this connects to a single truth that took me way too long to learn. The gap between wealthy people and everyone else is not talent, luck, or income. The data proves this overwhelmingly. 88% of American millionaires are self-made. Only 31% averaged a 6-figure income over their careers. 1/3 never earned $100,000 in a single year. The average millionaire is 61 years old and took 32 years to build their wealth. They went to public schools. They drove used cars. They looked boring. The gap is attention. Wealthy people pay attention to the 8 things I just described. They obsess over net worth, the income-spending gap, the true cost of debt, the mechanics of compounding, tax efficiency, their credit score, how they spend their time, and the specific financial traps at their current stage of life. These aren't 8 separate skills. They're one skill viewed through 8 lenses. That skill is financial literacy. It's the understanding of how money actually moves through your life, where it leaks, where it compounds, and where decisions you make today ripple forward into the version of yourself that exists 20 or 30 years from now. Every wealthy person I studied had this literacy. Every person struggling financially either didn't have it or hadn't applied it. The information was always available. The retirement accounts were always there to be opened. The employer match was always there to be claimed. The compounding curve was always bending for anyone willing to stay invested long enough. What was missing, almost without exception, was the understanding of how it all fit together. And critically, when each piece mattered most, because that's the thing about money, the right move at the wrong age can be almost as costly as the wrong move. Investing aggressively at 25 is brilliant. Investing aggressively at 62 with money you'll need in 3 years is reckless. Claiming Social Security at 62 makes sense for some people. For others, it costs them hundreds of thousands in lifetime benefits. Buying a house at 31 builds equity. Buying too much house at 31 traps you in a payment that starves your investments for 20 years. The trap at every age is different. The math at every age is different. The optimal move at every age is different. And knowing what those moves are before you reach each stage is the difference between Diane retiring at 61 with 1.3 million and Linda calling her in January, voice cracking, asking how she's supposed to survive. You don't need a higher salary. You probably already earn enough. What you need is to see the full map, every stage, every trap, every move before you get there, so that when you arrive, you walk around the trap instead of into it. These 8 things are the beginning. The map is what comes next. And friends, I hope you get that map in your hands as early as possible. Because the most powerful financial tool is time, and you can't get it back.